Hello and welcome to part 2. So yeah, now we're just going to get ahead and we're just going to start texturing this thing. And so I want to kind of make use of these smart materials, but I don't really just want to take them and then splatter them on the asset by default, you know? I kind of want to do my own thing, but at the same time I don't have time to fully do my own thing. That's the kind of angle that I'm aiming for here. So a lot of times when I'm doing this sort of stuff, I'll use components of the smart materials rather than the whole thing itself. So we'll start with like the wood planky stuff. In fact, I'll just call this, let's just say wood planks. And I'm going to disable the color because I'm not interested in whatever colors they have. I'm just trying to find a kind of a nice normal map that I can borrow, and I'll also grab their spec. And if you ever see like a smart material that you like and you want to know how it's built, you can just right click it and they have an editor where you can see kind of what textures are going into where, you know, how they've set things up. So if you know what each of these things does, it's very easy to kind of look at an existing material and to just say, ah, okay, so that's how it's built. But anyway, let's just have a quick look through these, see if there's a nice normal map. Okay, I like this one, but it's a little weak, so I'm actually just going to edit this. Just going to open this up, and I see here, this is where it's using its normal map, and the depth is set at 30%, so I'm going to bring this up until I'm sort of roughly happy with it. That's okay. You can, if you wanted to, save it as a new material, but you know, I've just changed the depth a little bit, so I'm just going to save it as the existing one. And by default, I believe this stuff, it's the smart materials, the way that it's applied is by cube mapping. I believe also, actually, I might not have mentioned it. You should be able to set it, yeah, so it has a preferred mapping type. Cube mapping, for the most part, will kind of do you right. It's pretty handy. We are going to switch to using screen for some of this, but there's no point in changing that in the actual material. For the materials, you might as well just keep it as cube mapping by default. But we will use, I think it's screen or from camera, because the problem with cube mapping is when you get a surface like this, you can see it starts to get a bit weird because it's trying to, I mean, if you can imagine sort of what a cube map is trying to do, is trying to project from, you know, well, up and down, left and right, back and forth. And so we're getting this weird kind of thing here where on one angle this normal map is going down and on the other angle it's going across. So from the side it's probably fine. Like if we look down on these planks down here, it seems correct, but then if we look at it from the top, it's going the wrong way. So I'm going to just set this to from camera, and I'm actually going to hide my preview for now. This is going to be a bit wonky, but I'm going to use the magnifying glass to just kind of the previews over here, so it lets you know kind of what your tiling amount would be. I think that's probably okay. Might want to be an orthographic for this, if it will let me. Let's see if it will work. Yeah, no, okay, so that seems okay. Also, one little thing before I actually begin. When you're painting things with 3D Coat, if they are a separate object, then you can basically brush all around them without having to affect the object sort of underneath it. Like right now, this brush size is huge, but it's only affecting this hinge, because this hinge, it's not actually attached to the box. It's like a separate element. And so, you know, I can draw here and it will paint on that, and then the moment I actually cross over and I start painting on this other element, then it will actually start to draw on it, which is pretty cool. But in this particular example, this treasure chest here, this is all kind of one mesh, So if I were to paint here with a big brush, it's going to start leaking into areas that I don't want it. And depending on how you've set your mesh up, you can utilize a pretty cool feature, which is just to paint on the faces only. So it's this sort of triangle icon up here. And now you notice when you hover over things, you can see the actual polygons that you're going to paint. And so it makes stuff like this very sort of neat, very quick and accurate. So I'm just going to do these, and again, because I'm using the from camera mode, I know that basically wherever I'm looking, it will do this. And I'm going to change the scale a bit on that. Actually, it seems a bit too big. So I'm going to do this one. It's better. So just going to cover these. Those we're going to want to rotate, so I'll do those afterwards. Do that. And then there's this, which isn't really important. It's just the underside. It'll never be seen. So yeah, now we need to do these. So I just need to rotate, and I think if I wanted to, I could just use this and do something like that, and that would probably be good enough. But if you need it to sort of be exact, I believe somewhere here, oops, it has a rotate, and there is a hotkey that I think allows you to input a number, but for the life of me I don't know what it is. So a way to snap this, actually if you hold control whilst you're turning it, so it's the same as when you're sculpting, so that's pretty cool. That wasn't the hotkey I was looking for. I was looking for something that pops up with a numerical field that allows you to actually put something in. But I'll right click back on this, and actually let me get it out of the way. That hasn't moved it. Weird, but oh well. Let's just do this, and we'll worry about that preview later. So I think that's all of my wood planks, and let's get out of orthographic mode. We can close this down. So yeah, that's the wood planks normal map done, which is pretty cool. And the thing with 3D Coat and its layers is it contains, or at least it can contain, like your depth, your color, and your spec or metalness. So if you were sort of working in some other kind of thing, or if you were treating it a lot like Photoshop, you might sort of be tempted to say, you know, that this layer is actually just a wood normals layer, and then you'd have another layer maybe sort of underneath where you would actually, if I change this to just color, where you would come in and you would start to give things color. But as I was saying, 3D Coat, it can contain all three of these things within a single layer, which is the way that I prefer to work, because it just sort of keeps things handy. You know that this kind of refers to that and whatever else. There are some occasions where I will sort of separate things out, but for the most part it's just handy to kind of keep things there. So we've already done our normals and our spec, which we stole from one of these smart materials. So now I'm only interested in the color, so I'm just gonna color it basically, and again just using the sort of the polygon faces tool. You know, this kind of stuff is unbelievably quick to do. The only thing I would say to watch out for when you're using this mode is your opacity, which I've actually just made a mistake. It's on 77%. You kind of want to make sure that that's on 100, because see, now if I go over things again, it's going to change the color a bit because it wasn't completely the color that I had chosen, which is my bad. Okay, so that's the base of that done, and now let's move on to the cloth. This kind of stuff that I have dangling down. Let's just call this cloth, and I'm pretty much going to do the exact same thing for this. I'm going to take the normals only, and they have a bunch of fabric presets, which is pretty handy. Let's try and see if any of these are actually any good. This one doesn't appear to have... Oh, it's got pretty okay normals. That one's pretty nice, pretty subtle. Subtle's probably what you want when it comes to cloth. That's way too... Actually, I don't know. I kind of like that. Shiny cloth. I like it. I'm going to do it. So let's minimize the preview. And now this is where things can get a bit weird for me. If I'm using my face painting tool, down here at least, again it's sort of trying to keep things low poly, you know, something that no one would ever really notice. But hopefully, maybe, it should be fine. I think this edge is going to remain. It's going to be fine. Didn't have anything to worry about. So yeah, just kind of continue. I was right a bit. So it looks a bit like it's leaking in, but not a huge amount. Not enough that worries me too much. See, I mean, you may have noticed that it looks kind of silvery, but that's basically just because of the gloss and the metalness. I want to change this to some kind of red, I think. And let's just do this cloth. It'd be nice, I don't think there is an option to do it, but it'd be nice if there was a way to paint sort of per element rather than face. I know when you use the fill tool you can select sort of layer, surface material, or an object. Neither of those apply to me in this particular case because of how I have this thing set up. I believe, is it my ring? Nope. My hinges? Nope. Lock hinge? Nope. It's going to be one of these. Handle? Nope. Chest side holders? Okay, so it's this. So yeah, it wouldn't work if I was just applying it to this object, because then I'd get this cloth material on this area here. So it'd be nice though as a brush option. Let's get rid of that, go back to brush. It'd be nice as a brush option to, rather than just paint on face, just to paint on the element basically, but not to do it by the paint objects. So it actually sort of is somehow able to identify kind of what mesh is attached to what other mesh, and to only paint on the mesh that I'm telling it to. So I don't know if any of the 3D Coat developers will watch this, but if they do, that is a little request from me. Alright, that'll do for that. And now we just have to pick a color, so I don't need a smart material for that anymore. Deep dark red, something like that. Oops, and make sure that you disable everything you want and then enable your color. It's pretty nice. Bit too much though. Too much. It's also worth noting, if you already sort of knew what color it was you were going for, you could have just, I can't remember which one it was. Oh, it was this one. You can edit the smart material, and you could have specified a color here so it would always be that color, or you could set it to modulate so it would use your color, and then, you know, rather than basically having to paint the whole thing twice, you could have actually just used the color. But I'm an idiot, so it is like this. Okay, that'll do. Although I have decided that it is way too shiny. Not sure. Yeah, we'll bring the metalness all the way down. Not all the way, most of the way. And then we'll drag this down a little bit. I do like it being a bit shiny, but not too much. Yeah, something like that's okay. Yeah. Also, if you weren't, you know, super happy with the colors that you've chosen, and you don't want to have to kind of keep choosing different things, repainting over the whole thing, you can always just throw this into Photoshop, or I think you can hook it up to other external editors. I think it's with yeah, so if you hit Control P, then you can sort of edit all the layers in an external editor. And there's also the edit projections, which is really cool. In fact, I'll quickly show you these. So Control P, and that should open up Photoshop and drop my layers in, and yeah, here it is. And it will come in with, you know, it will look a bit weird because it's including your sort of ambient occlusion map and your normal map on top, but you know, here's the color. And this is a bit sort of depressing because for the most part this is like all of the texturing I've done. Everything else has kind of been taken from somewhere else. I need to disable that Wacom thing, but okay. So yeah, you can come here and just do like your usual Photoshop things if you wanted to sort of mess about with the colors of anything. And then all you have to do is just save the work, and it will update. And obviously it looks like cack right now because in Photoshop I turned off the normal map and the ambient occlusion, so stick those back on. Yeah, there's that. But then the other really cool thing, which we don't really have any use for on this model, but I'll show you anyway, it's the edit projections in external editor. And if you're doing this, for most of the time you want to make sure that this project through is off, and I'll show you, well, I'll try to explain why you might want that off, or why you might want that on. And again, something to watch out for is it comes in with a light map, which kind of tries to sort of emulate the lighting, and then a normal map as well, which kind of comes in as the normal map stuff. But from here, you know, you can make a new layer and just call this whatever, and let's just draw anything, and then save it, and then go back to 3D Coat, and there we go. Obviously it looks a bit different to what I just did because my UVs are mirrored, but the reason that you would want the project through off, in fact, is not obvious because of my mirrored UVs, but if you have this project through feature enabled, if I were to draw, let's say, like a circle here, it would project through to the back. So yeah, for the most part you probably want to turn that off. Just delete that. Looks like something's gone really weird here. Oh, just because my normals are off? Oh, okay. Fair enough, pretty weird. Yeah, so we're gonna carry on. Similar methods to before. I'm gonna kind of like speed through most of this, but if there's at any point where I feel like there's something that needs to be said, then I'll slow down the video and ramble on. But yeah, for now, just gonna carry on just making stuff. Hopefully I don't speed it up so much that you have no idea what I'm doing, but as I said, it's mostly just sort of repeating the same stuff that we sort of done already and what was already taught in the previous video. But yeah, so let's just carry on with this for now. Yeah, actually, I just painted these hinges, but I realized that there is a little bit of a tip here. By default, ignore backfaces is usually enabled, and if you remember from the first part of this tutorial, I was talking about how you can sort of paint on individual elements without sort of crossing over onto other ones. So if I were to do this, even though my brush size is huge, it's not affecting that sort of layer behind it. So it will only draw on that if I go on there. And it's pretty handy for sort of trying to paint little sort of fiddly areas like here. I just realized that I was doing the cloth kind of a real stupid way earlier by trying to sort of paint the faces. And this would have been actually a much smarter way to do it. You can try and just do something like this, but you're going to end up with bits that just aren't going to be painted very well. In fact, I think it's even sort of in there a bit. And so basically you just want to disable the back faces, and you might think that this will now paint on everything behind it, but it's still going to be restricted to the element. So yes, it will ignore back faces, but it won't paint on anything that isn't the same element. So it makes little things like this pretty handy. So you can just quickly and easily kind of just do something like that, and it sort of, yeah, see, it immediately kind of covers the entire hinge that I have here. So yeah, one little tidbit. Now I'll go back to doing speedy stuff. So for the general kind of weathering, I know that 3D Coat has some like pretty nice kind of dirt or like rust kind of stuff. So that's always worth kind of having a quick sort of look as to see what's going on and where we could apply it, because you know, it's not really something you should cover the entire mesh with, but something like this, it does some nice stuff on the planks, but I don't think I would want to really use it anywhere else. Perhaps on the edges of these rivets or something like that. Basically it's just sort of like putting this noise kind of texture. I say noise, it's kind of like an alphard dirt noisy-ish texture, and applying it to, like, I'm assuming the sort of well, it'll tell you here, the sort of the concave areas, So more in shadow, I guess, is another way to kind of think about this, which is, you know, obviously where you would want that sort of dirt build-up. And it's a pretty good sort of starting point, I guess, to kind of cover some stuff. So I'm just gonna go ahead with this, but I'm gonna use a brush, and I'm gonna sort of set it to this one, so the depth and the opacity is sort of affected by my pen pressure. So if I were to sort of just draw lightly, then I'm only going to get some bits. If I draw very heavily, then, you know, I'm going to get lots. So I'm going to give this just a little kind of coating in areas where I kind of want it to be. It's a bit too obvious there, actually. So yeah, it's just sort of little strokes. Not to say that this is, you know, the pinnacle of artistry, but it does help kind of break things up a little bit more than just sort of applying the same sort of smart materials over like the whole mesh, which is what we've been doing so far. So at least now there is, you know, you could argue a slight human element, granted, not much though, but it's sort of the point of these smart materials. You kind of just want to make your job as easy as possible, essentially. For your portfolio stuff and whatnot, you probably still want to kind of make your own smart materials. Maybe, you know, but for me, and like my sort of everyday having to get work done at a sort of certain time to a certain standard, you try to take as many shortcuts as you can. Well, that's a bit messy, but you know, you never want to sort of do something that's terrible, but yeah, smart materials are, I don't know, they're just nice. Sorry, it's really hard to like talk and to do stuff, and I noticed somewhere that I have some rivets missing there, so let me just go back and add those in. I think I was using some sort of brass metals, this one I guess. It would help if I was on the brush tool. There we go. Not sure how I missed these, but there we are. Oh, I missed these as well. Aye. Okay, so that'll do for that. And my wood planks. Ordinarily, what I'm about to do, you probably might want to do on a new layer, but I'm not overly fussed, personally, so I'm going to make sort of a slightly lighter color here, and then I'm going to hit X to sort of invert these colors, and then press the V key to grab that color, and then get a slightly darker version. So I have a light and a dark version of these wood planks, and I'm just going to grab my brush and kind of just slightly change the color of some of them, and also make sure I'm not painting on spec or normals. We just want to alter the color here. Yeah, I don't really know why I do this. I must have picked it up from somewhere, but I never really do planks like all of them the same color, which is probably, I assume that's how it is in kind of real life. You wouldn't have every single plank being the exact same color, but yeah, I don't know. I kind of just do this stuff, and then I'll go over it again with like some green or something, which is as if to say it's kind of a little bit sort of moldy or rotting or left somewhere. Even if it's a brand new treasure chest, to be fair, I'll still try to sneak that in somewhere. But yeah, I find it just sort of Makes it a little bit more visually pleasing. Helps kind of break up the repetitive nature of these planks a bit. Yeah, something like that. And now I'll just grab some horrible green. And I'll pick one of these sort of scattery type brush things. Maybe not this one, we'll see. Definitely not that one. Must be something here we can use. That should be okay. It's way too strong though, so let's just whack down our opacity. And basically this stuff, like I almost don't want it to be seen, but I still kind of want to know that it's there, if that makes any sense whatsoever. So like I'll do some strokes and I can't really tell that anything's going down too much. We've got a little bit there. But so long as, you know, in my heart of hearts, I know that I've kind of made it a little bit moldy, then happy with that. And I am just kind of covering the whole thing, which probably isn't the wisest. You want to, I guess, stick to sort of corners and crevices or cracks or whatever. Like even sort of trying to utilize the normal map that we have here, you know, like why not just try to get some sort of in between those beams. It helps. At least I think so. Maybe you do not agree in the slightest. And that's fine. So yeah, I'm just gonna kind of continue with this for a bit, so it's back to speeding up the video, and I'll see you if I have anything else on my brain. Wow, I missed even more rivets. I don't know how I keep doing this. If you're wondering what it was I was doing there, like it wasn't any smart material type stuff. I was just sort of getting just a white brush with strong depth and just sort of going in and making my own little scratches here and there. It's mostly just the normal map that I'm interested in, but I don't really have the resolution on this model to do, you know, really fine sort of scratches, so it is what it is. Plus, I mean, this kind of thing is not really designed to be seen super close. It's kind of a mid-range asset. But anyway, just gonna fix up this with a bit of brass. Don't know how I kept missing these. Must have been accidentally deleting them. Oh well. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. Obviously, you might want to sort of just do a lot more. Like, if you wanted to weather the absolute crap out of this thing, then you can kind of just keep going. Okay, yeah, so if you wanted, you know, to just like absolutely beat the absolute crap out of this thing, even something like using like a procedural noise as a normal map is a good way to start, and then you'll come in afterwards and sort of do sort of scratches or whatever. Have, you know, I would recommend kind of having sort of areas of rest, as it were, so it's not completely sort of covered, like it's been thrown down the stairs, but somehow is still structurally intact. You know, like this kind of weathering doesn't make sense. But just to try to give you sort of an idea as to what it is you can do. Obviously, for this cloth piece, you can add in any kind of decal that you want, any kind of texture detail. But this was just a quick look at sort of smart materials. I think we've covered pretty much all you would need to know. But if there is something that I've missed or something that you don't know how to do, something that you don't quite understand, or if something's not behaving the way that you expect it to, then let me know. I'm sure we can get to the bottom of it. But yeah, for now, that is the end of looking at 3D Coat's smart materials and having sort of a quick bash on the textures. I hope to be back again shortly with some other video. But yeah, I hope you learned something. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.